You're listening to Dark Rain Chronicles. The rain hides many things, but it also remembers. Secrets washed away, voices swallowed by the storm. These are the stories it brings back, and tonight, you will hear them. They began precisely at 3:42 in the afternoon, a Tuesday swallowed by the oppressive weight of late summer heat. The timestamp burned itself onto my phone screen, a digital anchor the instant the murmurs started. They emanated from the basement's deepest recess, a shadowed pocket behind the hulking, antiquated water heater in the house where my childhood lay entombed. For 6 hours, I'd wrestled with cardboard sarcophagi brimming with forgotten relics. My father, gone 3 weeks now, had left this final labyrinth, a house poised for sale, demanding exorcism before the closing next month. This subterranean realm was the last frontier. Mother hadn't ventured down since the stroke stole her balance 5 years prior. And Dad curated dust, never discarding a single memory, tangible or otherwise. At first, the sounds were mere susurrations, faint as evaporating mist. I dismissed them, the house's plumbing groaning its ancient complaints. But then, fragments coalesced into syllables. What time? Not time yet. And must endure. The acoustics were peculiar, muffled as if filtered through dense earth, yet the corner offered only sheer concrete foundation, unyielding and blank. Sweat glued my shirt to my spine. The air hung thick, tasting of stillness and decay. I rose stiffly from a box spilling faded Christmas baubles, drawn toward the sound. A solitary bulb dangled from the low ceiling, casting a sickly, jaundiced glow that faltered before reaching the far wall. The whispers swelled as I advanced, sharpening into distinct phrases, drawing nearer, and home, almost prepared. My fingers, trembling slightly, found the old porcelain light switch beside the heater. Its decisive clack ricocheted off the hard surfaces. A second bulb flickered violently before settling into a harsh, surgical glare, flooding the corner. Nothing. Utterly vacant save for the intricate tapestries of cobwebs and the brittle husks of long-dead insects. Yet the voices persisted, undeterred by the light. He has arrived. Clear, resonant, impossibly close, a man's voice measured and deep. Yes, at long last, countered a woman, her tone laced with a desperate urgency. I pivoted, scanning the dim expanse. Boxes loomed like silent sentinels, furniture draped in spectral white sheets. Father's workbench a monument to accumulated grime. Emptiness stretched in every direction. A frantic drumbeat hammered against my ribs. Moisture beaded on my temples. Fumbling, I retrieved my phone, thumbing the camera app to life, initiating a recording. Is anyone here? The question fractured in my throat. We've waited oh so long, the man's voice replied, seeming to originate from the very space I occupied. 37 years, the woman's voice overlapped, a chilling harmony. The temperature plummeted, my breath ghosted, unseen before my face. My phone screen displayed only the stark, empty corner. I retreated slowly, camera steadfastly aimed. Who are you? What is it you want? You know us, Leo. The woman's voice softened, intimate. You spoke with us when you were small. A wave of vertigo washed over me. Only family ever called me Leo. a name I'd shed around age 10, the very year my refusal to enter the basement alone became absolute. Impossible. My retreat continued until my back met the rough wood of the stairs. You aren't real. This isn't real. As real as we have ever been, the man's voice asserted, sounding closer now. We watched you ascend through the very floorboards, heard your first uncertain steps, your earliest words, the night your arm fractured, your muffled weeping until dawn. My vision swam, dark motes danced at the periphery. That night, I remembered. 6 years old, fallen from bed, stifling sobs to avoid waking my parents, convinced that gentle voices from below murmured solace. Stop it! I flattened myself against the stairs. Just leave me alone. You must aid us, Leo, the woman pleaded, her voice trembling with suppressed anguish. We cannot find peace until the truth is known. What truth? The words escaped before I could barricade them behind reason. Of what transpired here, before your parents ever saw this house. The man's voice hardened, gaining an edge. Of what lies interred beneath this very floor. My phone slipped from my grasp, its impact sharp on the concrete. The screen's spiderwebbed, but the recording icon remains stubbornly lit. There's nothing under the floor. I knew this basement's contours intimately. Solid concrete. Dad had it checked when they bought it. The inspector didn't probe deeply enough. The thought, unbidden, echoed the unspoken implication. But you recall, don't you? The dreams, the screaming. I did. Nightmares that had stalked my elementary school years. Figures screaming from within walls. Desperate pleas muffled by plaster. A child psychologist had diagnosed an overactive imagination. Anxiety stirred by my grandfather's recent passing. Childhood phantoms. Mere dreams. Were they? The woman's voice seemed to drift behind me now. Why did you cease descending alone? Why plead with your parents to relocate your bedroom far from the space directly above this corner? My legs buckled. I landed heavily on the bottom step, hot tears tracing paths through the grime on my cheeks. This isn't real. Exhaustion. I've been down here too long. The dust. The stress. Leo Michael Sterling. The man's voice sliced through my rationalizations, precise and commanding. We require your assistance. Our vigil has endured long enough. It was then I saw it. A hairline fracture, a dark fissure marring the smooth concrete precisely where the voices resonated strongest. It hadn't been there earlier. My phone lay nearby, still documenting. Crawling forward, I snatched it up, lens focused on the crack. Through the screen, I watched it lengthen, widen. A dark, viscous fluid began to ooze upwards. The stench struck first. Cloying decay, an ancient, unholy rot. I gagged. Look closer, both voices urged in unison. Observe what they sought to conceal. The crack yawned into a chasm. Something pale gleamed within the dark seepage. Trembling violently, I zoomed the camera. Bone. Unmistakably, a human finger bone. I scrambled backward, ascending the stairs crabwise, phone held aloft like a talisman, still recording. The cracks radiated outwards like shattering ice, exposing more. A skeletal hand, the curve of an ulna. December 12th, 1982. The man's voice told, resonant with grim finality. The date they murdered us, entombed us beneath quick-drying concrete, then sold this house 2 months later to a hopeful young couple, expecting their first child. My parents. They'd closed on the house in February 1983, 2 months before my birth. The authorities never located us. The woman's voice quavered. Our families lived in ignorance. We remained here, watching, waiting for someone to heed us. Someone capable of hearing. The fissure reached the foundation wall. More fragments surfaced. Delicate ribs, the hollow sockets of a skull. Why me? My voice was a threadbare whisper. Children perceive what adults dismiss. You sensed our presence. You attempted to warn them, but they convinced you otherwise, persuaded you. It was unreal. The voices gained strength, conviction, but you are here now. You possess the evidence. My phone screen held the irrefutable proof. The spreading maw in the concrete, the emerging bones, the dark stains bleeding across the floor. 2 more souls lie beneath this floor. The man's voice gentled unexpectedly, concealed by men convinced of their impunity. But you found us, Leo, as you were always destined to. I remained on the stairs for uncounted hours, filming the unfolding horror. When the phone's battery finally succumbed, I used the old landline upstairs to contact the police. Disbelief colored their initial response, until I presented the video, until the forensic team began the careful demolition of the concrete. 4 skeletons in total, 2 male, 2 female. Missing persons from 1982. The house's previous owner, a contractor, had vanished that same year, reportedly absconding overseas with his business partner. Cold cases, frozen in time, now thawed by spectral whispers. The voices still visit occasionally, softer now, imbued with a quiet peace. Sometimes in the deep hush of night, I fancy I hear a murmured "thank you" drifting through the structure of my apartment, miles removed from that cursed basement. The house eventually sold, drastically undervalued, notoriety clinging to its foundations. The new owners promptly filled and sealed the basement, erasing the physical scar. But the video file remains. A digital ghost I cannot bring myself to watch again. Some truths demand remembrance, however fervently we attempt erasure. Every December 12th, I place flowers on 4 graves in Pine Grove Cemetery. The headstones bear recent carvings, but the dates reach back 37 years. I linger only briefly, long enough to murmur, "You're welcome," into the still air. They haven't spoken directly since their remains were recovered. Perhaps that was all they ever craved. Acknowledgement. Someone to listen intently enough to excavate the truth they'd screamed into silence for nearly 4 decades. I commit this account to permanence because the knowledge feels too heavy for one soul. Not merely the discovery, the investigation. Those details found their way into newsprint. But the voices. The reality that sometimes the departed cannot rest until witnessed, until someone braves the shadows to illuminate what lies hidden. My phone was shattered that day, yet the recording persisted, safe in the intangible cloud. I've never shared it, never allowed another ear to hear those spectral testimonies. Certain truths, perhaps, are not meant for universal consumption, yet they remain truths nonetheless. They demolished the house last month, erecting a sleek, modern structure in its place. Yesterday, compelled by an unseen force, I drove past. The basement is gone, filled earth beneath new floors. Yet I swear, as I idled by, I perceived faint whispers emanating from that corner of the property. No longer cries or screams, but quiet discourse, like long separated friends catching up. I didn't stop, didn't exit the vehicle. A slow pass, a silent nod. Some narratives conclude when the truth is unearthed. Some voices finally cease when their message finds reception. But their absence now doesn't negate their prior existence, whispering in the darkness, awaiting a listener. The police officially closed the investigation last week. Both suspects were located in Argentina. Extradition proceedings are underway. 4 families possess answers, however painful. 4 sets of remains bear names upon their final resting places. And 1 fractured concrete floor yielded its grim secrets, prompted by voices that refused indefinite burial. I avoid basements now. A needless precaution, perhaps. My own home rests on a solid slab. Yet sometimes when silence reigns absolute, I press my ear to the floorboards, listening. Not for those specific voices, their narrative is complete, but for the quiet insistence that truth possesses an inherent buoyancy, capable of surfacing no matter the depth of its interment. The child psychologist was mistaken. It was never mere illusion, never an overstimulated psyche. Children sometimes perceive what adults cannot because they haven't yet mastered the art of ignoring the impossible, of rationalizing the inexplicable. Perhaps that is why they selected me, why they waited patiently through the years until I returned, old enough to act, yet young enough to recall the credence given to voices from empty corners. The forensic report detailed a layered pouring of the concrete, 4 distinct strata, 1 for each victim. They hadn't perished simultaneously, but days apart. Each body shrouded in fresh concrete before the next life was extinguished. Methodical, the investigators termed it, calculated, demanding time and patience. Time and patience, akin to the voices lingering in that corner, whispering their chronicle relentlessly, until finally, someone truly heard. Tomorrow, I will acquire a new phone. The old one, a conduit to the past, will be retired. But the video file remains, archived securely, inaccessible. Some evidence resists destruction, even when the case files are stamped closed. Some voices merit preservation, even after achieving silence. The nightmares have ceased. No more screaming behind walls, no more disembodied voices invoking my childhood name in the dark. Still, I keep a nightlight burning. Habits formed in fear die hard, and certain corners, I now believe, deserve perpetual illumination. I wonder, sometimes, about other basements, other shadowed spaces where unheard voices might linger, other truths striving to penetrate concrete in the relentless march of time. But those are not my stories to decipher. I have relayed the only one I know, the one I was seemingly destined to hear. The one that commenced with whispers in a forgotten corner and culminated in 4 souls finally finding their way home. A single, cold bead of rain struck my cheek as the final tent zipper rasped shut. Above, the heavens bruised, darkening ominously, and a cold knot tightened deep within me. This was swiftly diverging from the tranquil woodland escape I'd envisioned, promised to Clara and the children. But the squall gathering its strength overhead, I would soon learn, was the least of the shadows closing in. Papa, is it going to storm? Finn's voice, a fragile blend of thrill and trepidation, cut through the heavy air. His eyes were wide saucers reflecting the turbulent sky. I manufactured a smile, a thin shield against the rising disquiet. Just a sprinkle, Finn lad. Nothing for us to fret about. Clara, coaxing little Maya into the shelter of the larger dome tent, cast me a look steeped in skepticism. Perhaps we should reconsider, Leo. Call it a day and head back. This feels like more than a sprinkle brewing. Obstinacy, a familiar flaw, surfaced. I shook my head, maybe too firmly. We'll be fine. Forecast was clear earlier. Just a passing shower, I'm sure. How bitterly I'd regret not heeding her intuition. The rain commenced its assault not with a sprinkle, but a sudden, furious drumming. We huddled within our nylon sanctuaries as the playful pitter-patter escalated into a torrential roar upon the canvas. Thunder cannonaded across the ridges, jagged fissures of lightning momentarily bleaching the surrounding forest bone white. Fear flickered in the children's eyes, so we conjured distractions. Tales spun from whispers and shadow creatures dancing in the unsteady beam of our lanterns. Through the long hours, the tempest eventually spent its fury. The relentless percussion softened, receding to a gentle cadence, the thunder muttering its retreat into the distance. Utterly drained by the day's hike and the storm's drama, sleep claimed us all. I surfaced abruptly from slumber, yanked awake by an unknown disturbance. Silence pressed in, thick and absolute. The storm had slunk away under the cloak of night. My watch face glowed. 3:17 a.m. A profound wrongness permeated the air. Slipping carefully from my sleeping bag, mindful not to stir Clara, I eased open the tent flap and stepped into the pre-dawn chill. Mist clung heavy to the ground, swirling like phantom limbs, lending the campsite an ethereal, unsettling cast. As my vision pierced the gloom, a sight arrested me, freezing the marrow in my bones. Chaos reigned where order had been. Our picnic table lay capsized, its legs pointing accusingly at the sky. The cooler and provisions we'd left secured were violently dispersed. Contents from our packs lay violated, strewn across the sodden earth. My initial thought, that the storm's unseen hand had wrought this destruction, dissolved upon closer inspection. This was deliberate. Boot prints, far too large for any of us, scarred the muddy clearing, and there, gouged into the rough bark of a sentinel pine, a crude inscription sent ice water through my veins. Leave now. You are trespassers. My heart hammered against my ribs. I scrambled back to the tent. Clara, I hissed, shaking her shoulder urgently. Clara, wake up. We have to leave. Now. She blinked, surfacing slowly from sleep. What? Leo, what is it? In hushed, rapid tones, I relayed the scene outside, careful to keep my voice low, shielding the children for a few moments more. Clara's face went ashen as she absorbed my words, her eyes dilating with stark fear. The authorities, she whispered, fumbling for her mobile. We need to call. I nodded grimly, watching as her expression collapsed. No reception, she breathed. Predictable. Miles deep in this dense wilderness, cut off from civilization. We were utterly alone. Wake, Finn and Maya, I instructed, striving for a calm I didn't feel. We pack light, head straight for the car. It's only a couple of miles back. Clara complied, though the terror remained etched in her features. As we gently roused the children, offering vague reassurances that failed to mask our own tension, an unnerving certainty grew. Unseen eyes followed our every move. We packed with frantic, silent haste, our gazes constantly sweeping the impenetrable tree line, searching the shadows for any flicker of movement. The children, sensing the palpable dread, were unnaturally subdued. We were poised for flight when Maya clutched my sleeve. Papa, she whispered, her small finger trembling as she pointed towards the dark woods. I saw a man. My pulse leaped. I strained my eyes, following her gesture. Nothing but tangled undergrowth and ancient trees met my gaze. Then, a flicker. A shape detaching itself from the deeper shadows. Another ghosted behind it, and a third. Clara. My voice was low, tight with urgency. Get them back in the tent, quick. No hesitation. She gathered Finn and Maya, pulling them back inside the larger dome. I stood my ground, projecting a bravery that felt paper thin. Who's out there? My voice cracked, swallowed by the vast, still forest. We're leaving. Just let us go peacefully. Silence answered, stretching taut. Then, a voice emerged from the darkness, rough-edged and laced with menace. Our ground. You don't belong. I swallowed, throat dry, mind scrambling. We apologize. We weren't aware. We're packing now. Give us an hour. We'll be gone. A guttural laugh echoed, chillingly devoid of humor. 10 minutes, then we come. The ice water in my veins turned to Arctic freeze. I spun back to the tent, hands trembling as I fought the zipper. Clara looked up, her face stark white in the lantern's wan glow. Now, Leo. Now, I confirmed, barely a breath. Leave it all. Just what we can carry. She nodded, fear widening her eyes. We worked with desperate speed, shoving bare necessities into our small day packs. The children, bless their terrified hearts, seemed to grasp the immediate peril, offering no complaints, asking no questions. As we stumbled out of the tent, the forest seemed to awaken with hostile whispers, the snap of twigs underfoot. They were closing in. Stay tight, I murmured, gripping Maya's small hand while Clara held Finn close. Head for the car. Whatever you hear, whatever happens, do not stop running. We plunged into the woods, the feeble cone of my flashlight slicing weakly through the oppressive dark. The terrain fought us. Recent rains had transformed the trail into a slick morass of mud, and gnarled roots clawed at our ankles. Behind us, the sounds intensified. Our pursuers made no pretense of stealth now. Taunts and guttural shouts ricocheted through the trees, fueling our terrified flight. We'd been running for what felt like an eternity, though mere minutes had likely passed when disaster struck. Finn's foot snagged on an unseen root. He went down hard with a sharp cry of pain. "My ankle," he sobbed as Clara hauled him upright. "It hurts. I can't walk on it." The voices behind us swelled, closer now. Stopping was unthinkable. Delay was death. Wordlessly, I passed Maya to Clara, then hoisted Finn onto my back. "Hold on, buddy," I grunted, staggering under his weight. Almost there. We pushed onward, the added burden turning each step into an agony of effort. The shouts intensified, growing frenzied, almost gleeful. They were gaining. Just as my legs threatened to buckle, a reflection pierced the gloom, a glint of metal between the trees. Our vehicle. "There!" I choked out. "The car! We're almost there." The cool, we burst from the tree line into the small, muddy clearing. My fingers, slick with sweat and dampness, fumbled desperately with the keys. "Leo, hurry!" Clara cried, her gaze locked on the forest edge behind us. I saw them then, indistinct figures spilling from the trees. A sharp click, unnaturally loud in the charged silence, signaled the doors unlocking. We threw ourselves inside, and I jammed the key into the ignition. The engine coughed, then roared to life, just as the first pursuer slammed against the driver's side window, a face contorted in fury, momentarily visible. I slammed the gear shift into reverse. Tires screamed, churning uselessly in the mud before finding traction. We shot backwards, narrowly missing a thick trunk. Then I wrenched the wheel, aiming the nose towards the faint track leading out. In the rearview mirror, a cluster of figures stood watching us flee, their features lost to the receding darkness. We didn't dare slow down until the first lights of the nearest town bled into the dawn sky. Our hearts still pounded a frantic rhythm against our ribs, the acrid taste of adrenaline sharp in our mouths. Pulling into the deserted lot of the local police station, Clara turned to me, her face luminous and pale in the nascent light. "Leo, what was that? Who were they?" I shook my head, the night's horror still reeling through my mind. "I don't know. But we're safe. That's all that matters now." Waiting for the station doors to open, the enormity of our narrow escape settled heavily upon me. The woods, once a sanctuary of peace and discovery, now felt menacing, imbued with a darkness I'd never perceived. I looked at my family. Clara, her arm a fierce shield around Maya. Finn, grimacing as he gingerly tested his swollen ankle. A wave of profound guilt washed over me. My pig-headedness, my dismissal of Clara's valid fears, had thrown them into the jaws of this terror. "I'm sorry," Words tore from my throat. Clara, I should have listened. This was my fault. Her hand found mine, squeezing tight. We're safe, Leo. We got out. That's what counts. As the sun climbed, painting the small town in hues of rose and gold, I made a silent, fervent promise. Never again. Never again would I gamble with their safety. The wilderness, captivating in its beauty, harbored teeth I hadn't respected. We'd sought simple communion with nature and found ourselves hunted through a nightmare forest. But we had endured, bound together by fear and love. And in that quiet moment, awaiting the arrival of the law, I knew with unshakable clarity that this was the only truth that mattered. Tents and coolers were replaceable. The car could be cleaned. But my family, breathing beside me, whole and alive, was everything. As we braced ourselves to recount the ordeal, I understood this night would forever be etched into our memories. A chilling testament to nature's indifference. The shadows that can dwell in tranquil places, and the ferocious strength found in facing down the dark together. Tuesday delivered the mirror, nestled in a raw wooden crate stamped crudely with my surname. Within the dim confines of my living room, beneath the lackluster glow of a ceiling fixture, I pried it open, anticipating mere furniture. What greeted me instead was a towering looking-glass, framed in dark timber, carved into a grotesque frieze of agonized visages. A cold knot formed in my gut. The detail etched into those faces possessed an unnerving vitality. Mouths gaped at unnatural angles, eyes stretched wide in silent torment, cheeks seemed impossibly sunken. Tentatively, I traced the deep grooves of one carving with a fingertip. My pulse quickened. A visceral wrongness emanated from the wood, yet my gaze remained captive. Reluctantly, I transported the artifact to my bedroom. It required placement, and the hallway felt too public, too exposed for such a disturbing object. Who, after all, would welcome the sight of it? Yet it was an inheritance, burdened with an unspoken obligation. The thought of relegating it to the garage felt disrespectful, a betrayal of some ancestor's memory, so I hoisted it onto the wall directly opposing my bed. That inaugural night, I endeavored to disregard its presence. Darkness enveloped the room as I extinguished the lights. Eyes shut tight, I still perceived it, a palpable weight in the gloom. Turning over, I confronted its shadowed silhouette. The carved face seemed etched with palpable suffering in the near blackness. Just nerves, I reasoned. Work stress, perhaps, or old wives' tales about cursed heirlooms seeding my subconscious. Sleep, however, remained elusive. Near midnight, surrender led me to switch on the bedside lamp. The mirror's surface threw back a weak, metallic gleam. Standing before it, I observed my reflection. Hair tousled, eyes weary, sleepwear rumpled. My hand lifted to scratch my scalp, and then I saw it. A fractional, sickening hesitation. The mirrored hand rose a beat behind my own. I froze, heart thudding against my ribs. Again, I tested it, raising the other hand. This time, the reflection nearly synchronized, yet felt fundamentally off. Its movement fluid, but temporally dislocated. Imagination, surely. Leaning closer, I stared into my reflected eyes. Initially, nothing seemed amiss. but then an involuntary twitch pulled at my eyelid. I blinked, and in that instant, a shadow slipped through the background of the reflection. My bedroom, compact as it was, offered no space for someone to stand unseen behind me, yet a tenebrous form ghosted near the mirror's lower edge. I spun around. The room stood empty. A chill permeated my arms. My throat constricted. Dousing the lamp once more, I retreated to bed, seeking refuge in sleep. Dreams followed, labyrinthine corridors filled with shifting silhouettes and faint, sibilant whispers that blurred the line between slumber and waking reality. Morning arrived. While dressing for work, my gaze remained warily fixed on the mirror. Initially, nothing appeared abnormal. My reflection mimicked my movements faithfully. The wooden faces maintained their tortured stillness, shrugging off the previous night's unease as fatigue-induced paranoia. I departed, deliberately staying away until well after dusk. Upon returning that evening, I settled onto my bed, scrutinizing the mirror. It reflected the mundane. My closet door, the nightstand, the lamp, all appeared ordinary. My hand touched the glass, cool and smooth. The frame felt varied under my fingers, slick in some areas, rough in others. No anomalous movement presented itself. Perhaps I had indeed frightened myself needlessly. After brushing my teeth and changing, I re-entered the bedroom. The reflection lagged again. The realization struck as I reached for the lamp switch. My mirrored counterpart's hand lingered at waist level for a fleeting instant before snapping into place. A heavy thump resonated in my chest, drawing a sharp breath through my nose. I felt my rib cage tighten. Without a backward glance at the glass, I plunged the room into darkness and climbed into bed. There I lay, eyes fixed on the ceiling. The bedroom's darkness was profound, yet the mirror's outline remained starkly visible. Silence pressed down, heavy and expectant, punctuated only by the bed's protesting creaks with my every shift. I tried closing my eyes, but a soft, dry scraping sound arrested me. It originated from the room's corner, near the mirror. My stomach churned. A cold sweat broke across my skin. The house settling, I told myself. A branch against the window pane. But the sound persisted, undeniably close to that unsettling frame. A profound reluctance held me immobile, yet I forced my head to turn. Filtered moonlight from the street lamp outside illuminated the glass surface. Something stirred behind it. The reflection of my bed, a faint, elongated shape materialized. It occupied the mirrored space, standing where nothing stood in the physical room. I was paralyzed, my breathing shallow and erratic. I watched a form glide sideways within the mirror's confines, before vanishing entirely. Scrambling from bed, I flicked the overhead light switch. The room flooded with light. I stared into the mirror. My reflection stared back, perfectly synchronized for several seconds. Then, I noticed its lips part a fraction of a second after I inhaled. The minute delay, undeniable now, felt utterly impossible. What could I do? My skin crawled. Abandoning the bedroom, I spent the remainder of the night huddled on the living room couch. Dawn found me stiff-necked and unnerved. Over breakfast, I actively suppressed thoughts of the mirror, eager to escape to work, to put distance between myself and that thing. Yet, a compulsion demanded I check. Standing hesitantly in the bedroom doorway, I peered inside. In the clarity of daylight, it resembled merely an antique, albeit one marred by its disturbing carvings. Slowly, I advanced. My reflection approached in tandem. I waved, it waved back. I jumped. It mirrored the motion precisely. Relief warred with lingering caution. Pressing my palm flat against the glass yielded only cold smoothness. Nothing untoward occurred. I fled to work, lingering until late, contemplating leaving a lamp burning in the room, but dismissing the notion as foolishly superstitious against an inanimate object. Nightfall brought me home to a bedroom steeped in stillness. Switching on the bedside lamp, I observed the mirror from the perceived safety of my bed, waiting. Silence reigned. Nothing moved. Exhaustion gnawed at my frayed nerves. Eventually, despite the lingering anxiety, sleep claimed me, the lamp still burning. Hours later, I awoke abruptly to pitch darkness. The lamp had expired. Blinking, my eyes struggled to adjust. An unfamiliar scent permeated the air, stale wood and ancient dust. Had the bulb flickered before failing? I fumbled for the switch. It remained stubbornly unresponsive. The house seemed unnaturally silent, amplifying the frantic pulse in my ears. Then, a dim luminescence emanated from the mirror itself. Not a reflection, but a soft, internal glow along the glass edges, like distant candlelight. Sitting up, I strained to focus. As my vision adapted, shapes coalesced within the mirror's depths. Not reflections of my room, but silhouettes. Tall, featureless figures stood in a spectral line, their eyes mere voids, their forms stark black outlines against a deeper gloom. My heart hammered violently. Sliding my feet to the floor, poised for flight, I watched them begin to stir. A faint, grating sound accompanied their movement. They shifted, pressing closer, as if their hands met the inner surface of the glass. An icy dread crept up my spine. I rose, legs trembling, forcing myself toward the door. A rustling sound whispered behind me. I dared not look back at the mirror. Fleeing into the hallway, I slammed the light switch. Blessed illumination flooded the corridor. Peeking back into the bedroom, the mirror appeared normal under the hallway's glow, though the lamp remained dead. Reaching in cautiously, I toggled the switch. Nothing. Retrieving a spare bulb from the kitchen, I replaced the old one. The lamp sprang back to life. Sleep was impossible that night. I remained on the living room couch, bathed in the glare of every light I could turn on, mind racing, skin clammy, hands unsteady. If the strangeness persisted tomorrow, I vowed, the mirror would be packed away. My sanity was worth more than any heirloom. The following evening, toolbox in hand, I entered the bedroom, resolved to remove the mirror. The instant my fingers contacted the frame, a subtle vibration hummed beneath my touch. Not powerful, but undeniably present. I snatched my hands back, heart pounding. Steeling myself, I tried again, sliding the mirror's top edge free from its bracket. It was unexpectedly heavy, demanding a firm grip on both sides. The carved faces seemed to bite into my palms. Straining, I lifted it clear and leaned it carefully against the wall, facing outward. That's when I saw it reflected. Not my room, but a flickering glimpse of a corridor paved with cold stone. The image wavered, insubstantial. I stared, caught between terror and a strange pull. Movement stirred within that reflected passage. A tall figure, head obscured by a hood or deep shadow, advanced towards the glass from the other side. Nausea roiled within me. My breath hitched in short, sharp gasps. Instinctively releasing my grip, The mirror tilted precariously forward. The figure's hand reached out within the reflection. A soft thump sounded from within the glass. Panic surged. I shoved the mirror flat against the wall, face inward, the reflected corridor vanishing behind solid wood backing. I stood there, heart hammering, rubbing my arms compulsively, trying to quell the rising terror. Exiting the room, I firmly closed the door. For an hour, I paced the hallway, phone clutched tightly, contemplating who to call. How could I explain a mirror revealing spectral hallways without sounding deranged? I resolved simply to cover it. Fetching an old blanket, I re-entered the room. The mirror rested face down, seemingly inert. My stomach twisted, but I managed to lift it just enough to drape the heavy fabric over it entirely, then settled it back against the wall. Shrouded. Silence. A fleeting moment of relief washed over me. Turning to leave, my eye caught a faint ripple beneath the blanket's surface. I held my breath, watching. Then, refusing to witness more, I fled the room, shutting the door securely behind me. That night, soft, intermittent tapping emanated from behind the bedroom door. I sat bolt upright on the couch, flashlight clutched in a white-knuckled grip, neck aching with tension. The sounds continued, irregular and unnerving. The urge to storm in, to shatter the mirror, warred with a paralyzing fear of what lay beyond the glass. Morning demanded a facade of normalcy, breakfast, work, and utter inability to concentrate. Returning home, I found the bedroom door slightly ajar. I knew I had closed it. Stepping inside, my blood ran cold. The blanket lay crumpled on the floor. The mirror stood upright against the wall, uncovered, and the carved faces. They seemed deeper, sharper, the wood subtly altered, the expressions more pronounced, more horrifyingly detailed around the eyes and mouths. Gooseflesh prickled my arms. The air felt thick, stagnant, smelling faintly of damp earth. Keeping my distance, I stood before the mirror. My reflection appeared, mimicking my posture. My unmade bed loomed in the background. For a few seconds, it seemed normal. Then slowly, deliberately, I raised my hand. My reflection remained motionless, its eyes fixed on mine, observing, no longer imitating. My throat went dry. Tremors started in my hands. The reflection's eyes narrowed, and a wave of profound dread washed over me, cold and suffocating. I took an involuntary step back. The mirrored face contorted into a mask of fury. A low, buzzing hum filled my ears. Suddenly, one of the wooden faces on the frame moved. Its carved mouth stretched open slightly. I stumbled backward, tripped against the bed frame, and collapsed onto the mattress. My eyes remained locked on the mirror. A scraping sound echoed from within its depths as two shapes materialized in the glass. Robed figures standing in a darkened corridor. They raised their arms, beckoning. A profound chill seized my body. My breathing grew rapid and shallow. My head felt light. Attempting to rise, my legs refused to cooperate. For a long moment I stared, mesmerized by those beckoning shapes. They remained within the mirror, yet their silent invitation resonated deeply. Words seemed to form just beyond hearing. My mind felt ensnared. Swallowing hard, I forced myself to move, pushing off the bed, snatching my shoes and bolting from the room. I slammed the door and fled to the living room, heart pounding, breath ragged, utterly without a plan. It had to go. Disposal was problematic, too large for the trash. Smashing it felt dangerous, potentially unleashing something worse. Asking for help seemed impossible. The explanation defied sanity. For now, it remains entombed behind the closed bedroom door. Sometimes I hear thuds, scraping. At night, faint flickers of light occasionally seep from beneath the door. The couch is my bed now. My back aches perpetually. Even here, in the relative safety of my living room, I find myself constantly glancing over my shoulder. I don't comprehend what those figures in the glass desire. Are they remnants of people, or something entirely other? I know only that they watch, and their presence is a palpable weight. Home has become a place I avoid. My current plan involves a storage locker. I'll swaddle the mirror in layers of old sheets, bind it securely with rope. I will avert my eyes from the glass during the move, terrified of glimpsing that stone corridor again. The very thought of it makes my skin crawl. That passage to an unknown destination, exerting its inexplicable pull. I recount this not for sympathy, but as a necessary unburdening, a warning. Should you ever inherit an antique mirror adorned with tormented faces, should you feel that unnatural chill radiating from its frame, do not keep it. Do not hang it where you sleep. Expel it from your life. The ensuing nightmares, the constant questioning of your own reflection, are too high a price. Sleep has become a forgotten luxury since its arrival. I feel it waiting, patient, for a moment of weakness, for me to finally yield and step through the glass. But I refuse. Inheritance be damned. I will face whatever comes from discarding it, rather than become lost in that place. Tomorrow, the storage locker. Lock it away. Hope it remains confined. Hope it doesn't follow. Hope for the solace of sleep. Even now, faint sounds drift from the other room. When I close my eyes, the silhouettes materialize in my mind's eye, beckoning. Closer, they seem to whisper. But I will not approach. I will not look into that mirror again. This couch, this exile within my own home, is preferable to meeting those eyes in the glass again. That is the unvarnished truth. If only that crate had remained sealed, its contents forever unknown. But regret is futile now. All that remains is distance. The old house exhaled dust and the dry scent of neglect as I crossed its threshold, anticipating the familiar symphony of groaning floorboards and rattling fixtures. What I hadn't accounted for, what stopped me cold at the shadowed end of the upstairs corridor, was a wardrobe. Hulking, fashioned of some dark, polished wood, it stood sentinel, its twin doors faced entirely with mirrors. It was an anomaly against the peeling damask wallpaper and the warped planking underfoot, its surface gleaming, improbably clean. The glass sharp and clear where age should have clouded it. A tremor of unease, like the prickle of unseen eyes, traced my spine as I passed, a sensation I promptly dismissed. That first night, exhaustion gnawed at me. My ambition was simple: unpack essentials, surrender to sleep. Yet the wardrobe exerted a gravitational pull on my gaze. 37 years old, seeking refuge from the city's clamor in this skeletal structure, I'd envisioned a quiet restoration. Time off-banked, funds secured. The house possessed potential, a sturdy frame beneath the decay. The day had been a blur of shifting cartons, wrestling with archaic light fittings, coaxing jammed window sashes. muscles screamed, neck vertebrae ground together. Relaxation was a desperate need. My mattress found its home on an existing skeletal bed frame in the primary bedroom. The wardrobe loomed near the foot, perhaps 6 feet distant, its mirrors aimed directly at me. A problem for another day, I decided. Killing the harsh overhead bulb, I placed a small lamp on the floor, casting long shadows. The air held a cool dampness. Moonlight, unfiltered by curtains I hadn't yet hung, streamed through the panes. Catching my reflection, I saw a silhouette against the lunar glow. I approached, rapping my knuckles against the wardrobe's wooden frame. Solid. The hinges gleamed, suspiciously new. Swinging a door open, I braced for the musty avalanche of forgotten garments or the sharp tang of mothballs. Instead, emptiness. Smooth, dark wood lined the interior, emitting only a faint, indeterminate staleness. I closed it, studying the man staring back. Boxer shorts, t-shirt, eyes bleary, hair askew. Then I extinguished the lamp and sank into bed. Sleep claimed me, but for how long, I couldn't say. Thirst eventually surfaced, pulling me from the depths. Silence reigned, profound, but for the distant whisper of tires on asphalt filtering through the thin walls. My eyes drifted to the wardrobe. Moonlight imbued the mirrors with a spectral luminescence. My reflection resided there, yes, but it seemed viscous, slowed. A lag, a distinct hesitation before it mimicked my movements. I lifted a hand. The mirrored hand followed, but only after a pregnant pause, a beat or two behind reality. Blinking hard, I attributed it to the fug of near sleep. Stiff knees protesting, I rose cautiously. Stepping closer confirmed the temporal discrepancy. The reflection shadowed my approach, but always fractionally late. A subtle, undeniable delay. Leaning forward brought the mirrored image leaning, but 2 seconds adrift. I mouthed a silent word. No audible echo, yet a profound disquiet bloomed in my chest, my pulse accelerating. My throat felt like sandpaper. Reaching out, my fingers met the cool, unyielding glass. My reflection's fingers met mine from the other side, tardy as ever. The fine hairs on my forearm bristled. This defied logic. I retreated. The reflection retreated later. A swift turn, a glance back. The mirrored figure pivoted with a sluggish grace. And then I perceived it. The backdrop wasn't quite right. Behind my lagging double, the room was mine, yet distorted. The angle felt subtly skewed. Wallpaper, identical in pattern, appeared tattered in the reflection, ripped in ways my actual walls were not. The bed mirrored mine in form, but its linens looked darker, the mattress deeply bowed. I scrutinized this detail. The reflection inhabited a space congruent yet dilapidated, marred by stains absent from my physical surroundings. My legs locked. A deep breath drew in stale, heavy air. Leaning closer again, tilting my head, trying to comprehend. My reflection mirrored the motion, delayed. Then I saw him, seated on the bed, behind my reflection. A man. His face, his hair, his build, identical to mine. He wore my t-shirt, my boxers. He simply sat, watching me, utterly independent of my actions. He wasn't mirroring me. He was other. Slowly, he raised an arm, index finger extended, pointing towards the wall to his right. The wallpaper there, in his reality, was peeled away, exposing a dark, rectangular patch. His expression remained flat, eyes fixed on mine. A knot formed in my stomach. Cold sweat beaded on my neck. Backing away again, I turned to examine my own wall, intact. The faded leaf pattern of the wallpaper was unbroken, undisturbed. No patches, no tears. Returning my gaze to the mirror, the other man maintained his pointing posture. My own reflection stood near him, a useless, delayed marionette. The man in the reflection remained static, save for that unwavering pointing arm. Slowly, deliberately, I retreated to my bed and sat, eyes riveted to the mirrored tableau. My heart hammered against my ribs. My breathing sounded unnaturally loud in the stillness. The urge to flee warred with an insatiable need to understand. I waited. After a minute that stretched into an eternity, the other man lowered his arm. He rose. He walked towards the mirror from within his decaying twin of the room. Though soundless, I perceived the faint vibration of his footfalls on his ancient floorboards. Stopping inches from the glass, he stared directly into my eyes. His face was my face, yet etched with a profound weariness, his eyes faintly bloodshot. He reached out, pressing his palm flat against his side of the mirror, as if testing its boundary. My own legs trembled as I stood. A wave of dizziness washed over me. I advanced until barely a foot separated us. His eyes tracked mine. His lips moved, forming silent syllables I couldn't decipher. Compelled, I reached out and tapped the glass 3 times. A dull, flat sound. The other man gave a slow, deliberate nod. Then, he pointed again, insistently, at the wall. This time, he stepped aside, affording me a clearer view. In his room, the torn wallpaper revealed not just a patch, but a small wooden panel inset into the wall, secured with a tarnished metal latch, a hidden compartment. I looked at my own wall, smooth, solid. Pressing my ear against it yielded nothing, just the feel of old plaster beneath the paper. The other man stepped back, returned to his bed, and sat, folding his arms expectantly. I backed away from the wardrobe and switched on the lamp beside my bed. Warm light flooded the space. In the mirror, the reflection was now instantaneous, normal. Except it wasn't. My movements were matched, but the decaying room behind me persisted, and the other man still sat there, watching. I rubbed my eyes fiercely, then strode into the hall, flicking the overhead light switch. Brightness washed over everything. Back in the room, the mirror held fast to its illusion. The other room, the other man. Blinking achieved nothing. It was undeniably real. My throat constricted again. Water. I needed water. Reluctant to leave, fearing some shift in my absence, the physical need won out. I hurried downstairs, illuminated the kitchen, gulped down a glass of water straight from the tap. Splashing cold water on my face shocked my senses, but my heart still pounded a frantic rhythm. Racing back upstairs, I found the scene unchanged. The other man sat patiently, observing. He was showing me something. Approaching the indicated wall, I examined the wallpaper with meticulous care. Nothing seemed amiss initially. Running fingertips along the seam where it met the corner, I felt it. A hairline crack in the plaster beneath. I probed, catching the edge of the paper with a fingernail. It lifted, tearing softly, like shedding skin. Underneath lay wood, old and dark, distinct from the surrounding wall structure. A rectangle, perhaps 2 feet by 1, fitted snugly. A small depression near one end suggested a handle might once have been there. I tried to pry it loose, it held fast. Glancing at the mirror, the other man rose again, approached his side of the glass, and tapped pointedly where his latch was located. Returning to my wall, I pressed the corresponding spot. A faint give under my thumb. More pressure. A soft click echoed in the quiet room. The panel sprang outward slightly. Gripping the edge, I pulled. It opened onto a shallow recess. Nestled inside lay a small, plain wooden box, coated in a fine layer of dust. I drew it out. It was surprisingly light. Lifting the lid revealed brittle papers and a single, large key forged from dark iron. The documents appeared to be old deeds, handwritten notes, and a crudely sketched floor plan of the house. The script was archaic, faded. My focus, however, locked onto the key. Cold, smooth iron. I looked to the mirror. The other man watched my discovery, offering a single, confirming nod. Then he retreated once more to his bed and sat down, resuming his silent vigil. He made no further gestures. I tried speaking, a useless whisper swallowed by the room. Carrying the box and key to my bed, I examined them under the lamp's glow. The papers referenced a locked storeroom in the basement, indicated on the sketch in a space beneath the main staircase. A space I hadn't noticed. The key, presumably, was the solution. What lay within that room remained a mystery, but the man in the mirror had guided me here. Perhaps this discovery was his purpose. I risked another glance at the wardrobe. The mirrored room remained, but the tension in the other man's posture seemed to have eased slightly. He stood and walked slowly to the mirror's edge again. He raised his hand, placing it flat against his side of the glass. Instinctively, I mirrored the action. The surface felt cool beneath my palm. He leaned closer, his gaze seeming to scrutinize my features, the faint scar near my brow, the day's stubble, my exact double, yet burdened by an exhaustion I couldn't fathom. Unsure how else to respond, I stood there, palm pressed to the glass, a peculiar numbness creeping into my fingertips. After several long moments, he lowered his hand, stepped back, turned. He walked towards the door in his version of the room, a door I hadn't consciously registered before, occupying the same space as my own, but leading into a hallway steeped in deeper shadow. He paused at the threshold, cast one final, lingering look back at me, and then stepped through, vanishing from sight. He did not return. I waited, listening to the silence, before finally switching off the lamp and attempting sleep. It was a fitful, shallow thing, my mind racing. Staring at the ceiling, feeling my heartbeat gradually subside, I eventually drifted off. Morning arrived with a crick in my neck and sore muscles. I rose slowly. The wardrobe stood impassively. Its mirrors reflected my room, precisely as it was. My reflection moved in perfect synchronicity. No lag, no phantom space behind it. My heart dipped. Had it all been a fever dream? But then my eyes fell upon the wall, the torn wallpaper, the slightly ajar wooden panel, and on the bed, the box and the iron key. It had been real. Dressed in jeans and a shirt, shoes laced, I carried the key and box downstairs. Beneath the staircase I found it, a section of wall subtly mismatched from its surroundings. The key slid into an unseen lock, turning with a dry, metallic scrape. The panel swung inward, revealing a small, cramped storeroom. thick with dust and darkness. My flashlight beams slice through the gloom, illuminating cobweb-draped shelves, rusted tools, and a stout metal trunk. The air hung heavy with the scent of aged wood and oxidation, untouched for decades. I wrestle the trunk into the hallway light. Inside, brittle letters detailing long-forgotten repairs, unpaid invoices, an inventory of vanished furniture. A tarnished metal plaque bore the house's original street number, different from the current one. Mundane relics. Nothing explained the man in the mirror. The rest of the day passed in a haze of exploration and contemplation. I repeatedly returned upstairs, checking the wardrobe. It remained stubbornly normal. Tapping the glass yielded only an immediate echo from my reflection. Movements were instantaneous. The interior, when opened, revealed nothing but solid wood. Night fell. Lamp lit, I waited in bed, watching the mirrors. Hours crawled by. My eyelids grew heavy, nothing up. Finally, I reached over and switched off the lamp. In that instant of plunging darkness, I saw it. A flicker, a fractional lag in the reflection's response. Scrambling out of bed, I approached. The delay was back, subtle but definite. A breath caught my throat. I waited. Seconds later, the other room materialized behind my lagging image, the decaying twin of my bedroom. But this time, it was empty. The other man was gone. His bed was unmade, the covers rumpled, the torn wallpaper remained. I leaned close, searching the mirrored space for any sign of him. Nothing. Just a silent, empty room. Placing my hand against the glass yielded no response, only a faint coolness, perhaps the thrum of my own pulse. I stood there a long while, but he did not reappear. Eventually, I turned the lamp back on. The other room dissolved. My reflection snapped back into normalcy. In the days that followed, I threw myself into the house's restoration. The hidden storeroom was cleaned, its contents cataloged. The box and key found a safe place in a drawer. Every night I checked the wardrobe. Sometimes after extinguishing the lights, the other room would bleed through. Occasionally, I'd catch a fleeting glimpse of the other man. A peripheral flicker of movement, him stepping just out of sight. He never pointed again, never attempted contact. He was simply present sometimes, moving through his silent, decaying version of my room. I never discovered his purpose. Perhaps guiding me to the hidden compartment in the storeroom was the extent of it. Perhaps he needed some forgotten aspect of the house acknowledged. I couldn't know. I continued living there. New wallpaper covered the old. Floors were sanded. Furniture reflecting my own tastes gradually filled the spaces. The wardrobe remained, untouched, in its place. I didn't move it. At night, sometimes I would douse the lights and watch the mirrors. Sometimes the other man would appear, standing, sitting, pacing his room. Sometimes he would leave and not return for days. Acceptance settled in slowly. The initial terror evolved into a tense, persistent curiosity. Sleep came easier once I understood no harm was intended. He never threatened, never menaced. He had pointed, shown me something hidden, and then retreated into silent observation. Now, there were just quiet visitations across the glass, long stretches of shared silence. This old house is my home now. I have the wardrobe with its mirrored doors. I have the indelible memory of that first night. And every so often I'd turn off the lamp, gaze into the mirror, and see him there, watching me from that other room. His movements always a fraction slower than mine, as if bound to a different passage of time. He never smiles, never frowns. He is simply there, and so am I. Outside, the convenience store's sign bled a lurid violet onto the rain-slicked pavement, a stuttering beacon in the dead hours. 2 a.m., and the obsidian lozenge of the car hadn't stirred, not for hours. It sat, engine a low thrumming beneath the hiss of the drizzle, windows smoked to utter opacity. A knot of wrongness tightened in my gut, a premonition gathering like the storm clouds that had finally broken. Something was poised to happen. For half a year, this fluorescent box had been my nocturnal domain. The graveyard shifted my penance for needing the coin. Glamour wasn't in the job description. Mostly, it was the quiet ritual of restocking, the rhythmic glide of the mop, the bleary transactions with truckers chasing dawn, or souls adrift in insomnia's tide. Tonight, though, the script had frayed. Around 11, the sedan had materialized, sleek, black, utterly alien to this frayed edge of town. A lost traveler? Engine trouble. Plausible theories frayed thin as minutes stretched into hours, the car's silent vigil amplifying my unease. Busy work became a flimsy shield. My gaze, traitorous, kept snagging on the vehicle outside. The threatened rain arrived, a persistent curtain blurring the car's sharp lines, lending the scene the quality of a waterlogged photograph. Around 1:30, needing air, needing proximity, I fabricated an errand with the trash bins. The cool, damp air was a slap, momentarily welcome. I fiddled with the bin lids, a clumsy pantomime, eyes darting towards the sedan. The windows remained impervious, black mirrors reflecting only the desolate street. But turning back, a flicker, a ghost of movement within the smoked glass. Someone was undeniably inside. Behind the counter's dubious safety, the urge to call the authorities prickled. Grounds, a car, parked legally, if unnervingly. Dismissal felt certain. Waiting seemed the only recourse. My shift concluded at 6. Surely, the phantom vehicle would vanish by then. But 2:30 a.m. shattered that hope. A door clicked open. A man emerged. Even distorted by distance and rain, his agitation was palpable. He prowled beside the car, a caged animal, hands raking through unseen hair, lips moving in silent, frantic monologue. Then abruptly, he pivoted, aiming himself directly at the store's entrance. My pulse hammered against my ribs. I'd weathered my share of late-night oddities, but this presence screamed dissonance, tripping every internal alarm. Closer now, his eyes were wide, darting, scanning the periphery like hunted prey. His clothes looked slept in, lived in for days. A subtle vibration agitated his hands. The bell above the door chimed, a startlingly violent sound in the profound quiet. He paused just inside, sweeping the aisles with that frantic gaze before it locked onto me. Evening, I managed, striving for a nonchalance I didn't feel. Anything I can help you find? No immediate reply, just the weight of his stare, unsettlingly intense. Slowly, deliberately, he advanced towards the counter. You ever get the feeling, his voice was a low rasp, charged, that you're being watched? I swallowed, the sound loud in my own ears. Comes with territory, I guess. Working nights. He leaned nearer, the stale scent of sweat and something metallic, unplaceable, reaching me. No, not like that. I mean, really watched. Eyes everywhere, tracking you. An involuntary step back. Look, mister, are you all right? Need me to phone someone for you? A laugh, sharp and brittle, escaped him, making me flinch. Phone who? Who isn't part of it? They're all in it. Every last soul. My fingers ghosted near the underside of the counter, seeking the smooth plastic of the panic button. Untouched until now, its potential suddenly felt terrifyingly real. Why don't you tell me what's wrong? I offered, aiming for calm waters. Maybe I can help. His eyes narrowed to slits. Help? You think you can help? His hand plunged inside his jacket. My breath hitched, gunned. No. He withdrew a folded, brutalized sheet of paper. He smoothed it onto the counter, revealing a frantic tapestry of scrawled words, arrows, cryptic diagrams. See, he insisted, a finger jabbing at the chaotic map. It all links up. Government, big business, the goddamn weather. They're pulling the strings, playing us all for puppets. I nodded slowly, my gaze fixed on his face, his trembling hand. That sounds terrifying, I ventured cautiously. Terrifying. The word ripped from him, volume escalating. It's annihilation. Do you grasp what they can do? The lengths they'll go to bury the truth. He was nearly shouting now, face flushed, spittle flying. My eyes flickered towards the door, a silent prayer for interruption, but the street remained a rain-streaked void. Sir, I tried, injecting firmness into my tone. I need you to lower your voice. You're starting to frighten me. He blinked, momentarily disoriented, as if surfacing from a deep, dark current. Then his expression hardened again. Frighten you? You should be frightened. We all should. They could be listening right now. He resumed pacing, a tight, frantic circuit before the counter, muttering under his breath. Wearily, I tracked his movements, my hand poised inches from the button. Press it and risk escalation. Or wait, hoping the storm within him would pass. Suddenly, he stopped, confronting me again. Supplies, he stated, the shift abrupt. Need food, water, batteries, enough for a while. Relief washed over me, a mundane request, a temporary anchor. Okay, sure. Grab a basket, I'll point you in the right direction. We navigated the aisles, a strange procession. Me guiding, him trailing, filling his basket with shelf-stable sustenance, while his low monologue about hidden masters and shadowed agendas continued unabated. I offered non-committal grunts, focusing on edging us back towards the register. Basket laden, we returned. As I scanned the items, the rhythmic beeps punctuated his renewed proximity. He leaned in again. You seem all right, he whispered. A decent kid. You need to get out, disappear. Find a place off their map before they notice you. I nodded, words failing me. My hands trembled slightly as I bagged the provisions, hyper-aware of his nearness. 78. I recited, the number sounding thin, strained. He produced a thick, crumpled wad of bills, peeling off several, shoving them towards me. Counting out the change, I saw his own hands were unsteady. Keep it, he commanded as I extended the coins. Might need it more than I will. Soon. that parting enigma, he hefted his bags and made for the door. I watched, heart still a frantic drum, as he reached the obsidian car. He paused, turned, his gaze finding mine through the glass. There was something raw in his eyes. Fear, desperation, a glimpse into the abyss he inhabited. Then he slid inside. The engine snarled, tires squealed on wet asphalt, and he was gone. Silence flooded the space he'd occupied. I stood rooted, staring at the empty, rain-glossed parking lot, the encounter replaying, refusing to settle. The remainder of the shift was a frayed nerve ending. Every chime of the door brought a jolt of adrenaline, half expecting his return. But only the familiar early morning traffic trickled in. Bleary-eyed workers fueling up, delivery drivers making their rounds. When my relief arrived near 6, the rising sun painting the clouds in shades of bruised peach, I debated recounting the night's visitation. In the nascent daylight, it felt dreamlike, possibly exaggerated by my own fatigue. Just a troubled man lost in his own storm. Yet, stepping out into the cool, clean morning, a subtle shift had occurred. The familiar streetscape seemed altered, as if a filter had been removed, revealing textures and shadows previously unseen. The walk home was slow, deliberate, the man's parting words echoing, "Before they notice you." I tried to dismiss it, the paranoia of a fractured mind. Yet climbing the stairs to my apartment, an instinct I hadn't known I possessed, made me glance back down into the street, searching the shadows for the ghost of a black sedan. That night drew a line. I left the convenience store job not long after, citing the need for change as a convenient fiction. The truth lay deeper, in the anxious vigilance that had taken root. Every late shift became a stakeout, my eyes scanning the darkness, waiting. And sometimes, in the quietest hours, a sliver of doubt remains, sharp and cold. What if his chaotic narrative held a kernel of truth? What if the eyes are real? And what happens when the paranoia begins to whisper in a voice that sounds disturbingly like reason? Friday bled into Saturday, the clock mocking me past midnight as I steered my sedan toward Denver, bone-weary and craving the solace of my apartment. The freeway flowed unusually vacant, just the drone of the engine filling the void. An oppressive blackness pressed against the windows, punctuated only by the stuttering neon flares of lonely gas stations, their light painting elongated, phantasmal shadows across the asphalt. 12:15 a.m., the dashboard glowed. Deserted streets, the city's usual cacophony, muted to a distant canine lament and the dry whisper of unseen leaves. My mind drifted toward the weekend's promise. Camaraderie, oblivion, the simple luxury of rest. Fatigue weighed heavy, a physical presence behind my eyes. Emerging onto Highway 70, the road unfurled like an obsidian ribbon slicing through the night. Headlights carved a tunnel through the gloom, illuminating only barren tarmac and the fleeting shapes of other vehicles, too swift for scrutiny. A monotonous panorama scrolled past. Skeletal trees, flattened earth, the relentless geometry of the highway. 15 miles dissolved behind me when a figure registered at the road's edge. A stranded motorist, someone needing aid. The shape wore a coat, aged and frayed, clutching an object. A flashlight, perhaps. I eased off the accelerator, a nervous flutter starting in my chest. Solitude at this hour, on this road, felt inherently wrong. I nudged the car onto the shoulder, the engine settling into a soft thrum. Behind me, impenetrable darkness reigned, save for the beam of my headlights and the sparse, distant glimmer of sodium lamps. Window down. "Need a lift," I called into the stillness. The figure paused, a frozen moment, then began a measured advance toward the car. Their face remained cleaved by shadow, yet an unsettling quality permeated their slow, deliberate gait. Closer now, I saw hands trembling faintly, eyes darting with a hunted energy. "Yes, a ride would be welcome." The voice emerged, low and raspy, layered with an accent I couldn't quite pin. Eastern European, maybe. A flicker of doubt, but the late hour and the isolation argued for companionship, however strange. "Hop in," I offered, thumbing the lock. The passenger slid into the back seat with surprising speed, settling without ceremony. A curt nod or two was their only response as I shifted into gear. In the rearview mirror, their eyes were fixed forward, gazing through me at the unfolding road. Silence stretched between us, underscored by the engine's hum and the occasional gritty crunch of the tires on the shoulder. Tentative conversation. Where were they headed? Met only clipped responses, monosyllabic walls. 10 minutes crawled by. I tried again. "So, where are you trying to get to?" Finally, a near whisper. "Home. I took a wrong turn." A nod from me. Getting lost happens. "Which way did you come from?" A vague gesture leftward, toward impenetrable darkness. "From Elm Street." Uncertain where to go now. My phone's map glowed. Elm Street lay miles back near the derelict old mill. "There's a service station up ahead. We can stop there if you need directions." Another nod, but the tension in their posture remained palpable. The miles spooled out languidly. The highway felt infinite, the surrounding darkness thickening, growing teeth. Then, a flicker in the rearview mirror, a shadow, fluid and swift, pacing the car. A head turn revealed nothing but empty asphalt beside us. Heart hammering, I glanced back at the mirror. Vacant. Just my imagination, surely, fueled by exhaustion. The passenger remained a statue, gaze locked ahead. I forced my attention back to driving, but the sensation of being watched prickled my skin. Was the shadow still there? Another mirror check. Nothing. Unease coiled in my gut. We navigated a curve, headlights slicing futilely at the dense night. The skeletal frame of a farmhouse emerged roadside, dilapidated. Windows boarded like blind eyes. Porch sagging under invisible weight. A shiver traced my spine. "The old Vance place," I murmured, aiming for casual. Empty for decades. The passenger nodded, breaking their silence. "It's eerie out here." A nervous chuckle escaped me. "Yeah, it has its moments." Past the farmhouse, the wrongness intensified. That persistent feeling of observation. My grip tightened on the wheel. A glance at the passenger, still staring forward, impassive. Abruptly, the car jolted violently over a pothole, the engine sputtering with an ugly cough. I pulled over, cutting the ignition. "Let me just check that," I announced, climbing out. The passenger watched, unmoving. Flashlight beam probing under the hood revealed nothing amiss. Just road grime. Nothing broken. Nothing loose. "Looks okay," I called back, sliding into the driver's seat. "Should be fine." The engine caught smoothly on restart. Deep breath. Calm down. Nearly at the gas station now, The road seemed to constrict, trees crowding the edges, their branches clawing at the narrow space illuminated by my beams. The passengers' silence grew heavier, their presence radiating a disquiet that seeped into the upholstery. Another 10 minutes, and the blessed flickering lights of the station appeared ahead. Relief washed through me, cool and sudden. There we are. Let's pull in. I guided the car into the pool of light, killed the engine. Okay, you can grab something here if you need. The passenger nodded, hand moving toward a pocket. Thank you. I unlocked the doors. Before they could move, an unearthly gust of wind slammed the parking lot, instantly dropping the temperature. I shivered despite the car's residual warmth. You all right? I asked. They nodded, though their hands shook visibly now. Just cold. I headed to the pump, the familiar routine of refueling a small anchor in the strangeness. All the while, I kept the passenger in my peripheral vision, still staring straight ahead. This wasn't right. The feeling of profound wrongness solidified. Tank full, I returned to the car, trying to dispel the unease. Silence. Eyes fixed forward. Right, let's move, I said, turning the key. Pulling out, I risked another glance. The passenger was now gazing out the side window, intent on something beyond my sight in the darkness. A knot tightened in my stomach. Everything okay? They turned to face me, and their eyes, pale, hollowed, almost vacant, met mine. I think, they said softly, you should continue alone. Confusion prickled. What? We need to get home. A slow shake of the head, their expression remote. No. You need to leave. Now. Before comprehension could dawn, a high-pitched screech erupted from the gas station behind us. I whipped around. The station's lights flickered violently, then dimmed near darkness. The previously quiet lot fell into an unnerving hush, broken only by the wind keening through unseen branches. What's going on? Panic surged, hot and metallic. No answer. Instead, the passenger began to dissolve, their form becoming translucent, insubstantial as mist. My eyes widened. Wait. What? My hand shot out, passing clean through the space they had occupied mere seconds before. No, don't. Their shape evaporated entirely, leaving the back seat starkly empty. I sat, stunned, heart thrashing against my ribs. Hallucinating. Was the fatigue, the late hour, finally fracturing my reality? Deep breath. Steady. Just tired, I muttered aloud. Need to get home. Engine roaring back to life, I accelerated away from the dimming, silent gas station. The road felt altered, the very air charged with a new tension. Colder now. An oppressive silence blanketed everything. 5 miles onward, another faint figure materialized on the roadside. My heart leaped. Not again. Steering wheel clenched in white-knuckled hands. I slowed, half dreading, half expecting the approach, but the figure remained motionless, simply watching. I pulled over again, engine idling, window lowered a cautious inch. Hey, need another ride? Silence. The figure didn't stir, didn't speak. Dread, cold and heavy, seeped into me. Hello? My voice trembled. Then it began to move. A slow, deliberate walk towards the car. I watched its approach, face still lost in shadow. Panic detonated within me. Gotta go, I choked out, slamming the car into gear, tires spitting gravel as I swerved back onto the highway. A frantic glance in the rearview mirror. The figure stood exactly where I'd left it, watching me recede into the night. My mind scrambled for an explanation. Prank. Stress-induced delusion. Something other. Foot pressed harder on the gas, seeking distance. The car's interior felt frigid, my breath pluming in the faint dashboard light. The highway stretched into infinity, the darkness absolute. Miles later, flashing blue and red lights pulsed ahead. A police cruiser parked on the shoulder. Relief warred with anxiety. Help. I pulled up behind it. An officer ambled over, flashlight beam cutting the dark. "Everything all right?" he asked, his voice calm. I nodded, trying to steady my own. "Yeah, officer. Just taking a moment." His gaze swept over me, then lingered on the empty passenger seat. "Got company?" "Had," I corrected, gesturing vaguely. "A hitchhiker." The officer's expression shifted, a subtle weariness settling in his eyes. "You mean someone just wasn't there anymore?" A chill, colder than the night air, snaked down my spine. "What do you mean?" He sighed, a sound heavy with resignation. "Been reports. Phantom hitchhiker on this stretch of 70. Folks pick someone up, usually near the old Vance place or Elm Street turnoff. Then poof, gone. Sometimes they see him again, further down the road." I stared, the pieces clicking into a terrifying whole. "Is that..." He gave a solemn nod. "Yeah, been happening for years. Don't know the why of it. Best advice, stay calm, keep driving. I'll let you get on." He turned, walking back to his patrol car, leaving me utterly alone on the haunted highway. I sat there, absorbing his words, hands shaking, heart a frantic drum. Starting the car again felt like an act of profound will. Fear and a strange sort of validation warred within me. Driving away, the image of the fading passenger and the officer's grim confirmation replayed endlessly. The road felt impossibly long now, each mile marker a small victory against encroaching dread. Every glance in the rearview mirror was fraught with the expectation of seeing that pale, hollow-eyed face again. The remainder of the journey passed in a haze. Finally, the distant glow of Denver appeared, a sanctuary on the horizon. Merging onto familiar, populated streets felt like surfacing from deep water. The tension began to leach from my shoulders as Highway 70 dwindled in the distance. I pulled into my apartment complex, the mundane lights a profound comfort. Outside the car, I drew a deep, shuddering breath. The night had been interminable, its spectral encounter etched into my memory. Inside, door locked, I leaned against the solid wood, heart still hammering. The hitchhiker, the silence, the vanishing act, the officer's nonchalant confirmation of the impossible. It spun in my head, surreal and terrifyingly real. Checking my phone offered a brief distraction. Notifications, mundane messages, an invite from a friend for a weekend getaway. I typed a quick affirmative, needing the anchor of normalcy. On the couch, sleep felt miles away. The phantom's presence lingered, a psychic residue making my skin crawl. Haunted highways, ghostly tales, no longer abstract concepts. Morning light did little to dispel the unease. A strange compulsion grew. Drive Highway 70 again in daylight. See it stripped of its nocturnal menace. Maybe logic would reassert itself. The highway bustled now, sun glinting off chrome. No lone figure haunted the shoulder. Foolish, perhaps, chasing ghosts in the sunshine. Yet the fear remained, a low hum beneath the surface. Halfway along the familiar stretch, near the Vance Place exit, a car was pulled over. A man stood beside it, thumb tentatively extended. He looked familiar. A jolt went through me. Echoes of the night before. Against all reason, I slowed. "Need a hand?" I called out, the words tasting strange. He smiled, a slight, unsettling curve of the lips. "Could use a lift, yeah. Heading toward Denver." "Same direction," I heard myself reply, unlocking the passenger door. He slid in, settling with that same unnerving quiet. The drive resumed, sunlight streaming in, yet the air grew thick. I watched him covertly in the mirror, staring straight ahead. Still. After a few miles, the question forced itself out. "Where are you coming from?" A brief glance my way, then back to the road. "Just passing through." His hands rested on his lap, unnaturally motionless. "Need anything?" A slight shake of the head. "No, thank you. Just need to get home." That phrase again. A shiver traced its icy path down my back. "Okay. Let me know." Silence descended once more, heavy and charged. Concentration fractured. My mind caught in a loop of déjà vu. Suddenly, my phone shrilled, startling me. My friend. Leo. Still on for the trip. Yeah, on my way," I managed, trying to sound normal. Hanging up, I glanced involuntarily at the passenger. His eyes met mine. A flicker. Recognition. Resignation. Something unreadable. My heart pounded. "You okay?" I asked, forcing casualness. He nodded, face impassive. "Fine." I took a breath. Drop it. Right. Onward. We drove on. The miles passed uneventfully, yet the tension never fully dissipated. We reached the turnoff for my friend's place. "This is me," I said, turning to the passenger. "Need anything before I go?" A small nod. He unbuckled his belt. "Thanks for the ride." He stepped out, stood for a moment, then simply walked away down the exit ramp, merging with the ordinary flow of the day. No vanishing act, no spectral chill. Just a man walking away. Relief warred with profound confusion. "Right then," I muttered, pulling away. The rest of the trip was blessedly normal, but the dual encounters gnawed at me. Too similar. Too strange. Back home, the need for answers became urgent. Online searches, Highway 70, Phantom Hitchhiker, Vance Place, Elm Street. Articles surfaced, local legends intertwined with tragic news reports from decades past. A young woman, Eliza Vance. Car trouble near the old mill late one night. Flagged down a stranger, never seen again. Her car found abandoned nearby. Since then, the sightings. The vanishing passenger. Eliza's spirit, perhaps, caught in a loop, replaying her final, desperate moments. It resonated deeply. The silent passenger, the disappearances, the palpable sorrow clinging to that stretch of road. Eliza, a purpose formed. Perhaps I could help. I contacted a local historian, an expert in regional folklore and hauntings. He listened intently to my story. His interest piqued. We met in a quiet cafe. "If it is Eliza Vance's spirit," he mused, addressing her directly, acknowledging her plight, sometimes helps a soul find rest. Unfinished business often anchors them. Armed with this fragile hope, I drove back to the old mill. now part of a neglected, overgrown parkland. Night fell, quiet, but for the churr of insects and the sigh of wind through skeletal trees. Parking, I walked toward the decaying structure, flashlight beam cutting a nervous path. The air grew heavy, cold. A palpable presence pressed in. I stood at the mill's crumbling foundation, the silence profound. "Eliza," I called out softly. "Eliza Vance. I know what happened. I want to help." Only the creak of ancient timbers answered. I circled the ruin, flashlight probing the shadows. Then a whisper, faint as breath in the wind. "Help me." I froze. The voice, her voice. "Eliza, is that you?" Louder now, laced with desperation. "Need to go home." Determination surged through me. "I understand. I'll help you move on." The air seemed to shimmer. A cold gust swept past, raising gooseflesh. My flashlight flickered erratically. I moved toward the mill's dark heart. "Tell me how. What do you need?" Silence. Then the whisper returned, clearer. "Find the letter. The truth." "Where? Where is it?" "Under the old oak." I turned toward the massive gnarled oak nearby, its branches black fingers against the bruised twilight sky. At its base, amidst roots and leaf litter, my light caught the edge of something pale. Kneeling, I carefully unearthed an envelope, yellowed, brittle with age. Inside, a handwritten letter, ink faded but legible. "Tough to whoever finds this. My name is Eliza Vance. That night, I needed help. I trusted. It was my end. Please know, I meant no harm. Help me find peace. Let me rest. Thank you." Tears blurred the fragile script. Her fear, her final plea, reached across the decades. "I'll help you, Eliza," I whispered, clutching the letter. I placed it carefully back in the envelope. Standing, I felt a shift, a lightening. "I hope you find peace now." A gentle breeze stirred the leaves around me, carrying not a chill, but a sense of release, of gratitude. The oppressive weight lifted. Calm settled over the old mill. It was done. I walked back to the car as the first hint of dawn painted the eastern sky. The highway seemed just a road again. Driving away, I felt peace settle within me too. Eliza was free. The next evening, I drove Highway 71 last time. Empty. Quiet. The darkness felt ordinary. In the rearview mirror, only asphalt reflected back. No pale face, no watching shadow. Just the road ahead. I smiled, a weight gone from my own spirit. The highway was free. Pulling into my complex, I cast a final look back at the dark ribbon of road, no longer haunted. The memory would remain, but the fear was replaced by the quiet satisfaction of having helped a lost soul finally find her way home. That Saturday morning clings to memory, sharp and visceral. I was deep in the gutting of the house, wrestling order from chaos. Plaster dust filmed everything, a gritty shroud over ripped-out drywall, and the skeletal remains of old framing. Boxes, heavy with the forgotten detritus of previous lives, sat piled like tombs near the dumpster yawning outside. Sweat slicked my skin. My shoulders burned with the dull fire of overexertion. The task ahead felt straightforward enough. Reroute ceiling wiring, thread thread new cables through the joists, then smooth it all over with fresh plaster and paint. An old, unassuming house, this place. Small, and charting no mysteries on the blueprints the last owners had left. A single story, a mundane attic crawl space accessed from the far end, which I dutifully inspected upon purchase. Nothing out of the ordinary. Then, perched atop the stepladder in the narrow corridor, peeling back a scored rectangle of ceiling, my gaze snagged on it. A door. Not an access panel, but a distinct wooden door, maybe 2 feet by 3, nestled flush between the aged ceiling joists. Flat, plain, ancient. I simply stopped, breath caught, staring. It hadn't been there. Not on any inspection. Not on any plan. The legitimate attic hatch, complete with its folding ladder, resided clear across the house. This was an interloper. Its hinges bore the patina of rust. Its handle, a simple curve of dark metal, spoke of bygone eras. A phantom limb of the house's past. Confusion clouded my fatigue. My fingers traced the rough grain of the wood. Old. Definitely old. The handle, cool beneath my touch, wasn't a modern fixture, but something functional, utilitarian, decades past its prime. Tentatively, I pushed. A faint rasp of wood against wood answered, the door shifting mere millimeters. Nothing else, just the hollow cavity above, which ought to contain nothing more than blown insulation and dormant wiring. Had I missed it? Was the blueprint flawed? Curiosity warred with a sudden, illogical apprehension. I had to know. Reaching higher, I gripped the metal curve and pulled. Resistance, then a brittle crack. The sound of ancient paint yielding, of wood fibers tearing at the seams. It swung upward, inward, releasing a small avalanche of dust that rained into my eyes. I squeezed them shut, scrubbing furiously with a grimy sleeve. My work light thrust into the breach, sliced through the gloom. An unfinished space unfolded above. Raw joists marching into shadow, drifts of discolored insulation. Nothing remarkable at first glance. I hoisted myself partway through the opening, head and shoulders entering the cramped void. Low roof beams pressed close. The air hung thick and motionless, tasting of decades undisturbed. A pocket of trapped time within the rafters. Stale. Utterly still. No boxes, no forgotten relics, just the bare bones of the roof structure. I listened, straining against the thrum of my own pulse, the distant hum of Saturday traffic. Silence. Yet, a prickle ran down my spine, an awareness, cold and certain, that I wasn't alone. The hairs on my neck stirred. It felt like scrutiny, intense and unseen, from just beyond the cone of light. My beam swept frantically, probing the shadows, stabbing at corners. Nothing stirred, only dust motes dancing in their artificial glare. I retracted my head, pulling the door closed behind me with a protesting squeak from the hinges. Back on the ladder, heart thudding, I stared at the closed portal, trying to impose reason. An old, sealed-off section, perhaps. Forgotten storage, undocumented. Plausible in a house this age. Someone's long-forgotten modification. But the feeling, that visceral sense of being watched, it defied logic. Maybe finding the unexpected had simply spooked me. Shaking my head, I descended, my limbs strangely heavy, a knot tightening in my gut. Finish the wiring, I told myself. Seal it up. Forget it. Work resumed, but my focus fractured. Tools felt leaden. The ache in my back sharpened. My eyes eyes kept drifting upward to that patch of ceiling above the hallway, near an old coat closet. How had I never noticed it? The afternoon bled away. I finished the wiring, cleaned up, forced down some food, tried distracting myself with my phone, scrolling numbly, but the image of the door persisted. The house itself felt altered now, its silence heavier, the air stagnant. I threw open windows, seeking circulation, relief. Drawn back inevitably, I stood beneath the hatch again, scrutinizing its outline against the plaster. Real. Undeniably real. Ladder retrieved, flashlight clenched tight, I ascended once more. A compulsion, irrational but strong, demanded a final confirmation. Door open. Light probing. Slower this time, meticulous. Across the joists, the insulation, the shadowed recesses. Old nails studded the wood like rusty thorns. A loose plank lay bridging two beams, forgotten lumber. Nothing else. But a feeling surged back, amplified, heart hammering against my ribs, mouth dry as dust, shoulders rigid. Anyone here? The words felt foolish, swallowed by the dead air, my voice sounding thin and alien in the confined space. A chill traced its way down my arms. Enough. I pulled back, slammed the door shut, and fumbled with a small, primitive latch I hadn't noticed before on its side. It clicked into place with unsettling finality. Down the ladder, wiping sweat from my brow. Calm down. Just an attic. Seal it tomorrow. Plaster over it. Erase it. But the wrongness lingered, a persistent hum beneath the surface of my thoughts. Evening descended. A sandwich, a beer. Rituals of normalcy that felt hollow. I prowled the house, inspecting my progress, but my thoughts kept circling back. The familiar space seemed subtly changed, imbued with a waiting tension. Was that a floorboard creaking upstairs? A faint, rhythmic tap. Each time I strained to listen, silence answered. My gaze kept returning to the ceiling. The sensation of being observed intensified, a physical pressure between my shoulder blades. Sleep came fitfully that night, punctuated by phantom noises, soft footfalls perhaps, a delicate scraping from directly overhead. I lay rigid in the dark, breath held captive, pulse drumming in my ears. Faint sounds, ambiguous sounds. The house settling, surely. Old timbers groaning. Yet perspiration beaded on my skin. The urge to investigate warred with a profound reluctance to open that door again. Foolish, unnerving. Sleep eventually reclaimed me, but it was a thin, restless veil. Morning brought resolve. Crowbar in hand, a square of plywood leaning against the wall, I faced the task. Seal it for good. One last time, ladder ascended, door opened, head craned into the void. Unchanged. Still. Empty. That familiar tension coiled in my chest. A bitter taste coated my tongue. Hands slick with sweat, gripping the ladder rungs tightly. I slammed the door shut, the sound echoing slightly, and set to work screwing the plywood firmly over it, obliterating the hatch from view. Secured. Done. That's the end of it, I told myself, the words lacking conviction. But the house held its breath. Working elsewhere that day felt like performing behind a thin curtain. My focus frayed. Every creak, every settling noise snagged my attention, drawing my thoughts back to the hallway ceiling. Catching myself glancing upward in the bathroom, tracing the corners where wall met ceiling. Was that a faint draft I hadn't felt before? Nerves. Just nerves. I slapped paint onto a living room wall, the chemical tang sharp in the air, trying to lose myself in the rhythm of the roller. call to a friend offered temporary reprieve. I mentioned the odd door, framing it as a quirky discovery, emitting the marrow-deep unease. Old houses, he chuckled, full of secrets. Normal conversation, grounding for a moment. Then the silence rushed back in when I hung up, thicker than before. Late afternoon, a soft tap, distinct. I froze mid-stride in the hallway, listening intently. It came again, from above. Tap. Faint, yes, but deliberate, like a fingernail against wood. My eyes fixed on the plywood patch. A wave of cold washed over me, my chest constricted, pulse hammering in my ears. Rational explanations scrambled for purchase. Heat expansion, a branch, no trees near that roofline. I fled to music, turning it up loud, a wall of sound against the insidious quiet. Later, outside, I circled the house, scanning the roof. Nothing amiss. Back inside, dinner was a tasteless necessity. Avoiding the hallway became a conscious effort, yet passing beneath the sealed spot felt like walking through an invisible beam, cold and charged. Eyes on my back, throat tight, fists clenching and unclenching at my sides. That night was worse. I woke abruptly, drenched in sweat, to a distinct scraping sound, not loud, but persistent, coming from the hallway ceiling. Heart pounding like a drum against my ribs. I swung my legs out of bed, flicking on the light. My limbs felt thick, reluctant. In the hallway, the plywood seemed subtly altered. Was that corner lifting? Just a fraction? Or was it a trick of light, of fear? My fingertip traced the edge, secure. Yet, I stood there a long time, staring upward, a tremor in my hands, breathing shallowly, trying to regain control. Silence reigned again, but the air felt electric, charged like before a storm. "Stop," I whispered into the stillness, the word barely audible, yet firm. Only silence answered. Rubbing my face, feeling the rasp of stubble, the dampness on my forehead, I retreated to bed, sleep a distant shore. Morning inspection revealed the plywood intact, yet a new, hairline crack spiderwebbed the plaster nearby, thin as a thread, barely visible. I hadn't caused it. My work had been precise. Touching the plaster, it felt unnaturally cold. Ear pressed against the wood yielded nothing. I threw myself into the remaining renovations with fierce determination, avoiding the hallway whenever possible. The tension remained, a constant companion, tightening my neck, knotting my stomach with every unavoidable passage. That afternoon, a desperate measure, I set my phone on a chair beneath the patch, camera recording, aimed upward. An hour I worked elsewhere, nerves frayed. Reviewing the footage showed nothing conclusive. No movement, just an odd flicker of the hallway light at one point. Perhaps the camera adjusting. Perhaps not. Deeply unsatisfying. Unease remained. Days bled into nights. I worked, I ate, I tried to sleep. The house settled around me, a structure of wood, plaster, and secrets. The feeling persisted, concentrated in that hallway. I finished the other rooms, moved my bedroom to the opposite end of the house, avoided the corridor after dark, left the plywood undisturbed, a stark white scar on the ceiling. I learned to live with the feeling, the constant low-level hum of being observed. When the bulk of the work was done, I placed a tall bookshelf directly beneath the sealed square, obscuring it from casual view. Out of sight, though never truly out of mind. Sometimes in the deep quiet, I still fancied I heard a faint tap, a soft scrape. I never investigated. I kept busy. It's been some time now. The feeling hasn't vanished entirely, but perhaps it has dulled, or maybe I've simply adapted. That hidden pocket of space remains, sealed but present. The sense of unseen eyes lingers, surfacing occasionally when my guard is down. But I don't dwell. I move forward. The door is shut. Nothing tangible has ever emerged. Just old wood, insulation, dust, and something else. Something that watches. I have no answers. Seek no further confrontation. This house is mine now, flaws and all. Whatever resides behind that plywood, it remains silent, contained. It hasn't harmed me. It just observes.